Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Us as Zamboni Experts. I'm your host, Marty Elliott, and today we have two guests. Our first guest is Mike Bullard, former NHL player, general manager, and head coach of the Caledonia Corvairs of the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, and also Jimmy MacNeil, the Iceman, Zamboni Driver of the Year 1999, and author of the Red and White Zamboni Ice Machine. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
How you
great.
doing, Zamboni?
Doing fantastic. Well, let's get this started. Gentlemen, got to ask, how did both of you meet each other? I'll ask you first, Jimmy.
Well, actually, years ago when Mike played his junior hockey in Brantford for the Brantford Alexanders, he probably wouldn't remember me a whole lot back then because he was young and he was making his mark in the world. I used to help repair the Zamboni at the Brantford and District Civic Center that where Mike played his home games out of, and kind of came into contact with him then. And years later, as I was working at the Civic Center for the city of Brantford, I ran into Mike as one of the coaches for the now defunct Brantford Junior B Hockey Club, or the Golden Eagles, yes, because they're not defunct, but they were the Golden Eagles at the time, and began, hanging out with Mike and the team. And Mike actually offered my young son a job as a stick boy.
Oh, fantastic. Hey, Mike, what brings back memories of meeting Jimmy?
Well, it's funny because Jimmy was the Iceman. When I was junior and I was 17 years old, started in Brantford. I mean, you get a lot of friendships in that, and I've always had a kind of a friendship with Jimmy, and Jimmy's kind of stuck around, and he's got a son, Jake, who, we started as a stick boy, but now Jake is director of player personnel for my hockey team, and, a very, very intelligent kid and does a really good job. And now he's working for us on the Indian Reserve, which is, I know Jimmy and his mom are happy to see him get out of the house.
Yeah, the fridge stays a little fuller, does it, Jimmy?
Oh, you better believe it.
Yeah, that's great. So I was talking to our media coordinator for our podcast, Ben Frinstein, and I asked him, Mike Bullard, is that the gentleman who's the comedian? What's he know about hockey? And Ben goes, no, I think this is a different Mike Bullard. And then I went, oh, okay. But Mike, I got to ask you, there's probably a story you want to share about the comedian Mike Bullard.
I don't say it on podcast. I guess you could say anything. But so the other Mike Bullard, he's gotten himself in a little bit of trouble over the years with sexual harassment. So my mom, who's 86 and alive and sharp as a tool and everything, she's everything. And she's reading the ticker in the morning and it says, Mike Bullard charged with sexual harassment. Well, my mom calls my sister and says, what has your brother done now? And I'm like, really? Like, I'm your son. I said, that's not me. She goes, I know. She said, I panicked. I saw Mike Bullard. So, I've been on Mike Bullard's show in the past, and you know what? He was very, very successful, very funny. I've met the gentleman. He's really funny, and it's like anything. You can be the hottest thing on the radio or TV, and bang, the next day you're not. And that's kind of like what happened to him. I don't know if it was his off-air attitude or anything like that, but he just seemed to get the fun. But very nice gentleman. I played in a lot of golf tournaments with him, and funny. You know what?
There you go. So, hey, Mike, are you still playing hockey right now?
I tell you right now.
Well, not right now, of course, but
up to play. But a good friend of mine is Dr. Anthony Galea, who's probably one of the top sports doctors in the world. He's out of Toronto, and I went and tried to play with the boys there a year ago, and I was looking good there. After 30 seconds, I felt popped or something else, and another hernia. So my buddy, the doctor, and he says, do you take advice? I said, I definitely would. He says, the dream's over. I said, what do you mean? The dream's over. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. He says, Bully, you can't play anymore. He says, your body's beaten up. It's done. Every time you make a move, you might pop it. He says, quit trying to impress the young kids. It's not going to work anymore. So my dream of hockey playing were over.
Yeah, sometimes we have to recognize that we can't do what we used to do, and even though our passion is still there, but good on you. Hey, Jimmy, I'm going to pass it over to you. I think you got some questions for Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as the kids go, now Mike depends on me to back him on all the stories that he tells about the old days when he was a superstar. So I remember those days very well. But Mike, actually, I'd like to start, myself by welcoming you to the podcast and congratulating you on something I was reading the other week about how you helped raise some big money for the Caledonia Food Bank as well as the Six Nations Food Bank. That speaks volumes of your character when you start to see things like that. A fellow like yourself, very strong in the community, supporting and very caregiving, and that's why people look up to you. And I, proud to say you're my friend. I think it's a wonderful thing you got going there. So if you want to just take a mention what it was, I don't know how you want to handle
Jimmy,
that one.
No, I don't think you've told these guys. With that, the way you talk there, Jimmy, you can also be my agent. Say it's easy to give back to the community. The two gentlemen that I work for in Ken Hill and Jerry Montour give me the opportunity to do stuff like that. We put a golf tournament together in a week and raised $20,000 for the food bank. And I think my best one was last year when all that happened in the Bahamas. They wanted to raise some money, and Kenny said, well, there's only one guy that can raise money, and it's Bully, because he can talk to anybody. And in less than 24 hours, I raised $150,000. Wow. That Kenny and Jerry had donated to the Bahamas, plus a lot more than what they've done. So, I learned a long time ago, my dad who's passed away, he always told me one thing. He said, remember, we didn't come from a lot. We grew up in the projects, and I was going to be that kid that was going to make it out of the projects. And my dad always says, remember where you lived and always take care of your friends around you. But my dad said one thing. He said, you treat the people going up the mountain the way you want to come down the mountain. And I live by that. There's not many players that I coach. I have a different way of coaching. I coach personalities. You can't. Talent will always come up front, but you got to know every kid's personality. And if a kid comes in and he says, "Hey, homie," or something like that, you got to go with it. You can't. These kids nowadays, it's not like when we grew up. I mean, they're different. The kids are completely different, and you just got to go with it. And if you don't go with it, it's going to be one tough time. And we've been very successful, and the returning of players is because not only the way we treat them, but how I've become a lot of friendships. And my biggest thing, Jimmy, is when it's all said and done, and I got hockey players that I coached 5-6 years ago, and one good example is Brandon Montour, who plays for the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, I took him out of nothing, and he was a very shy kid, and I put in an A on the sweater and just told him, he says, if you ever want to make an NHL, you got to open up. You can't be so shy. And the rest is history for Brandon Montour. He's playing for the Buffalo Sabres.
Absolutely, that's a good example, a real good example. So, well, that's awesome.
Good. Helping. I have some really old guys. My trainer, there's Razor, who's you work with, but we're a family down at the rink, and that's the way we want it. It's an open door policy, and we want kids when they come to play that not only are they playing hockey, but they got a great experience in life.
Yep, and that's so true of the organization and the leadership that's provided. That's bang on. Good one. Good for you, Bully. Wow. Marty, do you have anything you want to?
I got to add to that, Mike. How close to the vest that is. We had a podcast, and our guest was Todd Reynolds, local, out of Paris, Ontario, president of the Uptown Hockey. I'm sure you know who Todd is, an agent for some of the big players right now. And his mythology was exactly what you just said. Treat people as you want to be treated. It's all about family. Just a myriad comments from Todd yesterday. So it's great to hear you speak of that. And we all have to grow up, yes, and but our mentors that we look up to, don't do as I do as I say, kind of attitude. No, you have to do as I do, so you lead by example. And it sounds like you're doing that every day with your young fellas. So good on you, Mike. That's great.
Kids nowadays, you got to put it out there. Like, there's no beating around the bush. You know what? My motto is, you know what, guys, if everybody comes and works hard, everybody plays. I'm a pretty fair coach. And you know what? I don't like to have guys sitting in the stands because you don't learn from that. And, and ours are a team that there's a lot of pressure to win. And I have to take that pressure away from the players and make them have fun. And that's what we do as a team. I mean, Jimmy will tell you, I go into a dressing room there and before a game, and I might not even talk about hockey. I might tell a story that happened to me when I played or something like that, and the players will just look at each other and go, and start laughing and go, wow, really? It's stuff like that because the game's changed. To get 20 guys with their attention span in one room at the same time is no chance.
No, unless they're gaming on playing Fortnite. But anyways, that's a topic for the future. Hey Mike, let's walk back down memory lane, and I'm going to bring in my another co-host, Doug Peters, our regional manager from the United States, our California plant. Doug, why don't you chime in, and perhaps you can ask, you have some questions you want to ask Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen. How you doing?
Not too bad.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Mike. I've got some ties back to the NHL, not me personally as far as playing, but my dad was the chief engineer for the North Stars back at Met Center for the first 8 years. I think that you came into the league post his time there, but do you have any good memories of playing at the Met Center? And did you ever hit up the Thunderbird Hotel across the street from the Met Center?
Well, and we also our team got kicked out of the Marriott on New Year's Eve because of the party. But it was funny because those two hotels are like, the Thunderbird was right across the street from the rink, and you had to take a taxi because it was so damn cold. So you couldn't walk across the parking lot because you wouldn't thaw out for the game for about 2 periods. Minnesota,
it's
City, like cold. Like, it's cold. Like, everybody, they say, oh yeah. I said, no, it's cold. You just don't understand. When you're in a suit and a tie and you got to go to the game and you're thinking, do I walk and wake up and get a good fresh air, or do everyone that does that, they're done for the first period. They're still frozen.
Yeah, there's a bit of time, and unfortunately the Thunderbird's gone, and that had a bar there that I don't know in today's political correct state that we live in if that would go, and the wampum money that they had that they would give out, I don't think that would fly very well either, but a very interesting place and time.
I know that it was an automatic stop for every NHL team that came into Minnesota. You didn't go anywhere. There could have been the best bar in Minnesota, but no, the guys went to the Thunderbird. That was automatic. And that's why we didn't like to stay at the Thunderbird, because there's a rule. If you stay at the hotel, you can't drink at your hotel.
That bar was definitely legendary, and there was a time when Billy Martin, who was the manager for many teams, including the Twins and the Yankees on several occasions, got into a fight with a marshmallow salesman. And when Billy would come to Minnesota afterwards, they were chucking marshmallows at him to try to see if they could raise a little ire in him. Did you get a chance to play under Bob Johnson, or was that too late?
I had Bob. It was funny how it all happened. I was playing in Pittsburgh with his son Mark, who had come from the Olympics, and what happened was I got traded to Calgary, and Badger Bob was the coach. So I go there, and he calls me in his office first day, and he's got a big piece of paper, and he says, "Bully, this is what they're saying about you." He says, "I don't care," and he rips up the paper. He says, "You got a fresh start." He leaves. I look at the paper. There wasn't a thing on the piece of paper. It was blank. I said, good try, Bob, but one of the classiest men ever meet. We got beat one night in Quebec pretty good. We didn't lose a lot of games with Badger in Calgary, and my parents were outside waiting for me after the game, and I got nailed in the game. And Badger Bob, he comes over and he says to my mom and dad, he says, "Wow, did he ever get clocked, eh?" And my dad goes, "Oh, did he ever?" He goes, "You know what? So we lost." He says, "You know what? You can't win them all." But it's just, he never was a negative man. Like, he probably brought, I tried to explain to a guy the other day, actually, because Badger Bob came up. He's the one that probably started where he made the assistant coaches actually work. And he had a plan, and the assistant coaches had to carry out that plan. And Badger Bob he was really smart on the bench. He did, just a classy guy.
He was a great guy. He's got ties to real good friends of my mom's, and he was also the coach at the high school that I went to just a few years before I got there, I might add. But what a great guy, and great rivalries growing up in Minnesota as a kid between he and Herb Brooks. And some of your philosophies sound a lot like Herb Brooks, where you understand what buttons you need to push with each player. I think that's a bit harder today.
If you yell at a kid right now, he'll shut it right down. Gone. Those days are over. I love watching Tortorella coaching Columbus. And everybody thinks he's crazy and that, but you know what? He's smart. He's intense. But you know what? He gets the best out of every player. And if you don't want to give it the best, he moves you. And you know what? He's moved pretty good players.
He demonstrated that, Mike, with Dubois in the Leaf 5 games.
He just needs a kick in the butt once in a while.
Yeah, and it got caught on television, but what a turnaround for him.
Yeah, and you see, I love watching it now and seeing the coach in the sweatsuit. That's old school. And it's funny because he torches and all about facial expressions. He's never happy until it's over. And you know what? But I talk to any players that have played for him. They love him. They absolutely love him. Yeah, he's crazy, but you know what? He weeds out guys that don't want to pay the price. And you see how Columbus plays.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, lost by 1 in the 5th overtime, or the 5th. I guess it was the 5th overtime or 5th period last night. They could have won either way. Going back down memory lane with you, Mike. I mean, let's talk a little bit about your career. I mean, 9th overall, 1980 draft. Talk about the draft. I mean, how old were you, and where were your thoughts at? Who was your mentor coming into that draft? Who did you look up to? Maybe you can share with our guests a little bit of history on that.
It's funny because I was rated the 3rd best forward in the draft. Denny Savard was ahead of me, and Doug Wickenheiser, who ended up going 1st overall at Montreal. Mm-hmm. I actually went 5th overall to Washington, and I don't know what happened there, but I went to Pittsburgh, who was looking for a defense, and I went down the table, and my first year as a rookie, I scored 37 goals, and I never got a vote to Rookie of the Year at all, not one vote. So, wow. That's how the media was such a big thing back in the early 80s. I mean, Pittsburgh, we were averaging 65 people before Mario, and Mario doesn't come to Pittsburgh. There's no team anymore. They would have been done.
Yeah,
to hear your name, I think I was more excited for my mom and dad than I was for me. I knew it was coming. I was a cocky young kid, and you know, and I just said that, you know, I was disappointed going to Pittsburgh because if they wouldn't have took me, LA had the next pick, and I probably could have enjoyed LA.
Perhaps.
The weather's great out here. The taxes aren't so great, but it is a great place to play and be anonymous. At least back then it would have been.
Yeah.
So you went to Pittsburgh, Calgary, St. Louis, Philadelphia, finished your career with the Maple Leafs. Who were you would say your top three mentors were coming through the league, Mike?
Well, you know, Wayne Gretzky. We're the same age. I mean, if you don't look up to Wayne, you know, there's something wrong with you. I was a big Wayne Gretzky fan. I mean, my favorite player of all time is Bobby Orr.
Right.
I had the pleasure of meeting him many a time, and just an absolute class individual. You know, and it's funny because growing up, one of my favorite players was Terry O'Reilly. I was a big Bruin fan, and so we played Terry O'Reilly in the game, my first rookie. And after the game, I asked him if he could sign a stick and send it over to me. Well, he did. By the time we got back to Pittsburgh, and I went in the stall, grabbed my stick, the boys cut it in about 25 pieces. So, and I was like, guys, someone cut my stick at Terry O'Reilly, and they all laughed. I said, come on, Rook, you don't do that. You're in the show now. You don't ask someone else for their autograph. You know, it's funny, but I'd say Bobby Orr was everything I wanted to be. You know, and then Wayne and I are the same age, and just watching how Wayne executed himself on and off the ice, you know, that was my problem. Is I kind of like the off ice a little too much, you know, and you know, it caught up to me. That's why I ended up leaving the NHL earlier when I was probably on my way to Hall of Fame numbers, and ended up going over to Europe and lighting it up in Europe and being one of the all-time scorers in Europe. But
right,
I'm 25 years sober. To this day, you know, I promised myself 5 years old that I would never drink again, and I've helped.
That's a great story. Still stay in touch with Wayne?
Yeah, I actually saw him at the Masters there a couple of years ago. We were walking there, and I was following Dustin Johnson. I said, you know, Wayne's got to be here. So I went over and I saw Wayne and shooting the breeze, and you know, and Wayne said to me, he goes, Bully, if he'd ever practice, he'd be the best golfer ever. He just doesn't practice.
Yeah, it's different mindset. So international play, World Cup, 1986. I tell you, I remember that game-winning goal. And you were on that team. Share the experience of playing on the '86 World Cup team for Canada.
You know what? It's a lot of fun because back then when you played on the team, that means you didn't make the playoffs. So it was funny because, you know, you were still going to have a good team no matter what. And the biggest thing is when we all got there, and Pat Quinn was one of our coaches, and what happens is everybody doesn't understand that they know they're going to bring players in, so the guys play their butts off to make sure that they don't bring players in, because it's a kick in the face as an NHL player, other NHL player, unless if I'm playing and they told me Wayne's coming in for me, I understand that. But you know what I'm saying? It's just the guys. Canadians have a mentality, and you know what? And the Americans have been picking it up in the last 5-10 years. Is it doesn't take long to gel. You're there for a job. You got to check the egos at the door, and you know what? We're going to be together for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. Let's make the most of it. And you know what? And I think that's what you're seeing a lot in hockey now. You know, the junior championships and all that is. Players usually, you have, like, you imagine playing against on the same team right now with Matthew Tkachuk after playing with him the night before. You want to kill him. But you know what? As soon as you walk that door, he's a teammate now. And it's a hockey player can turn that off right away.
Yeah, they have the capability, the mindset to separate the two, right? What happens inside the rink, what happens outside the rink. No question about it. Let's talk a little bit about the European play. You mentioned you're the top scorer in the European League. You played in Switzerland and Germany. How was that transition coming out of the NHL, North America League,
Very
going over to
tough.
Europe?
Very tough at the start because, I come from the NHL and I was way ahead of everybody else. And, you can get frustrated early. I had a coach that ends up being a very good friend of mine, Bernie Johnson, who wasn't much older than I. And he said to me one day, he says, "You know what, Bully? Don't get frustrated." He said, "These kids idolize you. So just have fun with them. And they'll work their butts off. They'll never have the talent you have, but they'll work." And then, you know what? Once I learned that, and then I started enjoying my time over there, then the hockey became easy. When you think you're better than everybody else, nothing works out.
So true, so true. So if you look back at that time over in Europe, did you actually see yourself as a mentor?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because everywhere I went, I was hated in a lot of buildings, and but once I played on the team, I mean, everything changed. I was a player's player, and I was one of those guys that I didn't yell in the room before the periods and that, because I learned a long time ago that if you're going to yell, you better be the best player on the ice, because you'll lose more respect from everybody on the team. But you know what? I just went about my business, and it was funny when I was over in Europe because I was so much older. Like I played with Marco Storm. I saw Marco Storm playing when he was 16 and bought him and told our coach, bring him up to our main club. So Marco played with me, ended up getting first rounder to Boston, and then San Jose. And then I played also on the line with Marcel Gotch when I was 39 years old and he was 18. And you know what? It was a lot of fun, but wow. When the game was over, I was dead. He wasn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Age. It's all about age, eh, Mike?
And I want to believe that when they were all said and done, and I know Marco, I've heard him in a couple of interviews saying that, if it wasn't for Bully, I wouldn't have been where I was. He taught me certain things to prepare myself for the NHL, and you know what? And people don't realize the biggest one is, I said, Marco, learn English. I said,
Wow.
You got it, or you're going to be in the minors. He goes, well, what do you mean? I said, head coaches in the NHL don't want guys who can't speak English. You have to speak English. It's not like baseball where you're going to have a guy sitting on the bench. What did he say? What did he say? Things happen too quick for that to happen.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, if I can help people any way I want, I mean, you know what? Do I have some black marks on my career? Yes. Do I have a lot of good things? Yes. And would I ever change? No. I had so much fun, and Jimmy can tell you, man, when I get on a roll in the room with all my coaches and all the guys, and I start telling stories, you know what? We just laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes we lose touch, if you will, with the idea of having fun. There's so much pressure on athletes today. Let me talk about that subject compared to when you played, Mike. The pressures on athletes today. What's your input on that with players that are coming up right now?
A lot of money right at the start. Guys are making some crazy money right now, and you know what? But they have to take care of themselves. Like we used to get in shape in the summer. These kids never get out of shape now because it's a business. I mean, kids go on the road trip with a computer in their hand. We didn't. You know what I mean? Like the pressure. I think it's more pressure for a kid to stay on the team and keep making that money than it is to anything and all that, because there's always someone coming up. It's just the way that the sport is built right now, and with salary caps, you might be that guy that makes $3 million, but geez, it's just we need a guy $2.5 million. You know what I mean? And it becomes more, hockey's more of a business now.
Hey, Jimmy, let me bring you back into the conversation, and maybe you guys can talk a little bit about what Mike's doing now with the Caledonia Corvairs.
Yeah, actually, if I could just make a couple of points before we get there.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, Bully, one of the biggest trades you were ever involved in. Could you just give us a quick outline of that, if you got something on that? Back from Calgary to St. Louis, who were the players that they gave up so that you could go play in St. Louis?
Well, the trade was, I just come off a 106-point season, and I got traded. It was more of a 1-for-1, really, if you really think about it. If you look at the guys in the trade, it was Dougie Gilmour for me. And, I went to St. Louis and didn't last long in St. Louis because Philadelphia was been after me for a long time. And they said, we got a shot at him. Let's get him now. And, but Dougie Gilmour went to Calgary and they won a cup. So they made a smart move.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Okay. And then Philadelphia, they paid homage to you by having you autograph a hockey sweater for one of the Goldberg episodes. Did they not?
Jimmy, Goldberg, the show where he wears the Philadelphia Flyer thing. So Philadelphia called me and said, listen, we'd like you to sign an autograph jersey for Mr. Goldberg. And I said, why? Why wouldn't you not get Bobby Clark or something like that? And he went to his first Philadelphia game and his dad bought him my jersey. And I was his favorite player. And he told me anytime in LA, he says, come on down to the set and you can see the show and everything. And I've had a pretty good little personal friendship with him. It's been awesome.
That's awesome. And then, of course, from St. Louis, you ended up heading into Toronto, where they were just kind of held on for future considerations. And I think Toronto did pretty good because just a couple of years ago, they signed the young guy, Austin Matthews. I think that holding that card back to get Austin Matthews for you was a great deal. So what do you think about that?
You know what? Austin's a great player. I mean, I don't think my time in Toronto was very good. I loved it there, but the coach, Tom Watt, and I just didn't see eye to eye. And if you don't get along with your coach, you're done. It doesn't matter what sport you're. When he needs to put someone out there. He didn't use me where my strengths were. I mean, I was a power play specialist, and he just didn't feel like I could play on it. And he tried to kind of he actually did bury my NHL career. But you know what? I can't sit there and feel sorry. I went to Europe and I played another 13 years.
Absolutely.
So you know what? My dad always said, he says, if you want to sulk, he says, how about the people that you grew up with that can't play at that level? And I said, yeah, you got a point, Dad. So you know what? That's the way it is.
Your dad was a wise man.
Bully, I have never met you, my friend. I've watched you on TV. I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking the time to come on our podcast. It's been great listening to your stories. I want to thank Jimmy MacNeil for joining us as well, our co-host Doug Peters out of our Paramount, California facility. And if you have a question for one of our experts or an idea for the future episode, please email your questions or request to the info@zamboni.com. And for more information on additional podcast episodes, please visit zamboni.com podcasts or ask our Zamboni experts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. This is Marty Elliott. I wish you to have an ice day.